Want to support the channel? Buy some merch in the link description down below. You know, I don't blame people for thinking Arrowhead's running out of ideas. I mean, this SMG really is just a medium pen version of the Knight.
Oh, but
Hey guys, it's the Gundam Boy, and if you couldn't tell, we're taking a look at the Gallant. I'm gonna be real with you guys, I'm not really a fan of the SMGs in Helldivers. Not because they feel like assault rifles with a range impairment, or because Arrowhead made them only function as a powerful weapon at close range. Mostly because in the beginning of Helldivers, I wasn't a fan of the whole slow and shooting kind of style of SMGs. I mean, I like the stroker, but that's not fair. It has a flamer attached, and it's the fast and shooty or the slow and hard hitting. But I can at least give credit to the Gallant doing something different. Of course, if you want this weapon for yourself, you can get it on the Exo Experts Warbond, specifically on the first page, making it a very easy weapon to acquire for anybody playing. Let's play a quick game with the SMGs. I want you to figure out which one is the Gallant. Alright, ready? Here, take a look. Alright, if you guessed that the Knight SMG's on the left, then you'd be correct. But if you guessed the Gallant on the right, you're wrong. It's actually a Hive Guard in disguise. Taking a look at its stats, we can see that it has a standard damage of 65 with a durable of 13. Then we can see it has medium armor pen, but there isn't really anything that makes this weapon stand out, at least in terms of its stats. Just looks like an SMG. But how does the Gallant compare to its $20 brother? In their base forms, there's nothing different other than their damage and recoil. Otherwise, most of their stats are pretty much the same, with a few exceptions. Gallant does say that it has a much higher muzzle velocity, which, I mean, fair, it does. It has 450 as opposed to the 375 on the Knight. I can assure you though, most Helldivers probably won't even notice the difference. But that one hyper-autistic friend will always insist that there's something different. But as he tells them, no one will listen. Attachments are basically identical to most of the weapons you'll see in this game, but with this specific setup, you can piss off Commissar Kai. And of course, you have a short and an extended magazine option. Perfect for a bullet hose weapon. Bolstering a fat amount of RPM does mean that this SMG struggles with its high recoil. This SMG has a lot of kick to it. When you rip this weapon at full speed, you are going to have to fight against its own recoil, even when you fully optimize it for its recoil. So I would highly recommend that you fire this thing in short bursts if you're going for precision targets. But if you're heavy on the trigger like me, there is an option for different firing modes. And another thing you need to keep in mind is that this thing is ammo hungry, as you'll burn through your ammo reserves if you use this in constant battles. Of course, this problem can also be managed by not being heavy on the trigger, or also wearing things like Siege Ready or Bring Supply Crutch Pack. Even in its flaws, it's still just your basic SMG. And you can't forget that it has the one-hand capability, which means you can bring which means you can pair it with things like Ballistic Shield. So, let's talk about the playstyle.
Oh, but Gundam Boy, he can nerf the damage at range!
Gundam Boy! It just sounds like you want an assault rifle. Trust me, you don't need a master's in gunsmith to be able to know that this SMG is not built for long range. SMGs overall do have worse performance at longer ranges, which can be very easily tested by using a stratagem call-in and just shooting it to see the damage difference. So, when it comes to outputting damage, you're gonna want to keep every enemy in sort of a sweet spot. Getting these enemies into this kill zone is highly dependent on the faction you're going up against. Bugs and Illuminate will both walk right into it. Bot units will be a bit more difficult with this, as their slower units usually output the most damage, meaning you'll have to wiggle your way into close range and make the first move. I think something people forget often about medium pen in comparison to light pen is that medium pen doesn't have to deal with damage fall off when it comes to light armored targets. They see medium armor and that means they could shoot medium armor, but what they don't know is that they're basically cutting their damage. This is highly dependent on the enemy part that you're shooting at and their durable rating. This really helps your damage output for enemies that only have armor pen too, giving you the advantage that light pen may not have. But from what I've tested between the Knight and the Gallant, it's kinda hard to gauge whether they're really any different from each other other than penetration. Otherwise, most people are gonna just pick it up so that they can spray and pray this bitch all over the place. Starting on the Illuminate front, the only barrier to entry to fight on this front is to have a penetration value of 2, which the Gallant doesn't have to worry about. The Gallant is a very effective weapon to counter Voteless, but that's not really a high bar, whether you're aiming for their heads or mowing them through their bodies. It has a similar performance to the Knight, but the only concern you'll have if you use this as your dedicated chaff control is that you are going to run out of your ammo really quickly. You can make quick work out of Overseers in close quarters combat, and you'll often dominate most of these scenarios as long as they don't start beating on. Otherwise, the rapid damage output of this weapon will mow through overseer groups like nothing. And flesh mobs are directly countered by this SMG, taking at least a mag and a few more bullets from the next to finish it off. And this is while I'm using the extended magazine. And just because I could, I went up against a harvester and shot him in the joints and found that it took around 2 mags to kill it. When it comes to building into a loadout, it fits pretty much anywhere you want it. If you need an SMG that can output a shit ton of damage, well, the Gallant's right here, which makes it a very flexible option no matter what you're trying to do on the Illuminate front. Moving on to the bot front, where the Gallant might require a little bit more thinking to use, as the automatons are one of the few factions where engagements can vary from long ranges to up close in your face. And pray that it's in your face, where you have the advantage. The overall performance of this weapon has no problem up close, being able to lock onto enemy faces and just blowing them off. But God forbid that you're fighting an enemy that's outside of your effective range, because this thing does tickle damage. Open environments are going to be the bane of your existence for the automatons. If you're going to advance on the enemies, be sure to use terrain as much as possible to your advantage. And even if you're not using the terrain, you can always use other equipment like the ballistic shield to get close. Now, medium pen may not be as important here since you can still take out a lot of the enemy units by just flicking them in the head. Turns out firing 30 bullets at one spot really does do a lot of damage, especially with this weapon's fire rate. This entire game, I was just bullying cyborgs. Even if enemies think they have the advantage on you, with this little burst of a machine gun, you can just weave your way out of every problem and mag dump them. That's the nice thing about this SMG, is that it is a great flexible option no matter where you might be fighting. Just make sure to keep an option on you for long range combat, because that's not where this weapon's gonna shine. Then lastly, we have the bug front, where the SMG fits right at home at bug slaying land. But this is definitely where you'll feel that bad ammo economy. Because there's like 6 types of bugs you could be shooting with this SMG, it means you're going to be spending more rounds overall. Pray that there's a supply FRV nearby. It's not a bad option by itself, but I would highly recommend bringing more gear to help with chaff control if that's what you need to worry about. But it's not like you're landlocked to only using your guns, you have other stratagems for support. Otherwise, its overall performance by itself is pretty goddamn deadly. You can just paint the entire area with a bullet. And because it has that medium armor pen, it means even things like alpha commanders don't last a chance in a fight. But don't lean on this weapon too heavily, as high intensity firefight situations will quickly have you begging for a supply pack. So be sure to diversify your loadout when it comes to counter chaff. Overall, I'd have to say when it comes to the Gallant SMG, I would recommend getting it. It's probably one of my favorite SMGs to be added in the game, which is comical because my initial favorite was the MP98 when it comes to something like the Liberator Penetrator. I am not a fan of this weapon, but there's something about the burnt monster Gallant that makes me really enjoy using it. And as long as you're aware of what front you're playing on, the weapon can perform pretty well, as long as you know what you're doing. And with its mix of pros and cons, it's still pretty damn good compared to other weapons. Like, its flaws mostly come from it being an SMG at short range, and ammo economy, well, yeah, we have a weapon that fires this fast, yeah, ammo's gonna be a problem. Overall design for it, I'm a little concerned that Arrowhead might go down the path of weapons too similar to each other, but I think the overall performance of this weapon does make it worth the purchase in the Warbond. But with the roster of SMGs we have right now, Arrowhead's gonna have to get real creative if they want to add another one. Overall performance on all the factions, well, the SMG does pretty damn good against them all. But that is the end of the video. What do you guys think about the Gallant? I think that the supply pack users have to look out for 2 people now: backpack weapons and Gallant. But be sure to like, comment, and hype this video and subscribe so you guys can see more of my content. Ta-ta!